Tonight we're here to discuss heart valves, the diseases which damage them, the treatments which are currently available, and a potential new treatment which has the possible outcome of actually changing the world of heart valve replacement. We hope so anyway. So to talk about her innovative development, we have with us this evening Dr. Elena Juan de Pardo. Elena is head of the Tissue Engineering Laboratory here at the Harry Perkins Institute, and she's also a senior lecturer at the University of Western Australia. After starting her career as a materials engineer, working on fusion reactors, Elena decided to transfer her engineering skills to the medical world, and she has focused her research on tissue engineering, regenerative medicine, and in vitro modelling, which hopefully you're not going to explain all of that to us because it sounds way too complicated. Her current research involves the development of a pioneering 3D printing technology known as melt electrowriting, which enables the production of highly controlled cellular scaffolds of tissue engineering and biomedical applications. And we have some here which we will point to during the evening. Next to Elena, we have Jenny Turner. Jenny is a nurse practitioner and program coordinator of the Transcatheter Aortic Valve Implantation Service, known as TAVI, at Fiona Stanley Hospital. And TAVI is actually the procedure which is used to insert artificial heart valves. Jenny has a great deal to do with patients. She's there with them and their families as they consider and learn about the process that they're going to go through if they choose to. And she's there at the end when they come out of surgery and back onto the wards. She works very closely with cardiologists. In fact, I think she runs 3 clinics with 3 different cardiologists, so it's a very busy place at Fiona Stanley. And so she's going to be able to paint a good picture for us from the patient perspective. And then we have with us up there from Cervantes, cardiologist at Fiona Stanley Hospital. And Abdul works with Jenny. He also works as a researcher here at the Harry Perkins Institute with Elena. And you may have heard him on ABC Radio, Perth Radio. He has a weekly spot, which is just excellent listening on all things to do with the heart. Abdul is a specialist in heart valves who's working with Elena on the 3D printing heart valve, a little bit like the marriage that Peter Liedman was talking about earlier between the breast surgeon and the biomedical engineer here. You need to have the marriage of 2, the clinical and the basic science research. So Abdul, I'm going to start with you, because approximately 20% of all cardiac surgery is for the treatment of heart valves, which to me sounds like a really high percentage. What are the reasons, what are the conditions which might lead to someone needing a replacement heart valve?
Well, thanks, Miriam, and good evening, everyone. And I'm sorry I can't see the audience, and my apologies I couldn't be there. So look, aortic valve disease there are multiple different kinds of causes for it, but it's typically seen as one that comes about as we get older. And it isn't generally felt to be that there's something, it's not sort of a disease of excess, sort of like coronary artery disease, which is far more people are more aware of, that causes heart attacks. The human heart valve beats about 80 million times a year, or about 5 to 6 billion times in someone's lifetimes. And so that's an enormous amount of stress and mechanical forces on those leaflets over time. And as people get older, those leaflets start to degenerate, the leaflets that we're born with, and they degenerate by a process of calcification. Calcium builds up on the leaflets, and the leaflets get harder and narrow, and the leaflets, instead of opening really nicely, and they become a lot stiffer, and it's much, much harder for the leaflets to open. And then that becomes stenosis, or we call it a narrowed heart valve. That's the most common cause. And that's just something that's typically seen as a disease of aging. There are some people, though, that are born with a slightly different valve. So most of us are born with 3 leaflets, and some people are born with only 2. And just the virtue of just having 2 leaflets instead of 3, think about it, 5 to 6 billion times the heart beats. And those forces, instead of being applied to 3 leaflets, are now only being applied to 2. And that sort of change in the forces accelerates the narrowing of the heart valve. And there are some people that need a heart valve replacement at a very young age because they're born with a slightly abnormal valve. And then here in Western Australia, we have a third type of condition that unfortunately, one we haven't still yet been able to eradicate, and that's rheumatic heart disease. And that, it's overrepresented in our Indigenous population, in our rural and remote communities. And we know that people who get rheumatic heart disease at increased risk of needing valve replacements from either narrowing or leakiness, sometimes at a very early stage in their life.
Abdul, if left untreated, what's the prognosis for someone with aortic stenosis?
So aortic stenosis, when it's severely narrowed and you start to get symptoms, 1 in 2 patients could be dead within 2 to 3 years, and so the trajectory is very poor once the valve is quite narrow. It's kind of like a very aggressive cancer, and so the clock starts ticking. And for us, we treat it quite seriously. And Jenny manages our program and manages a very big workload in trying to manage our waiting list, because patients, unfortunately, we need to try and treat them as quick as possible on the wait list, because that clock isn't 2 years is not a very long time.
And so I said at the beginning that approximately 20% of all cardiac surgeries for the treatment of heart valve disease, but how actually common? What's the statistics of the occurrence, say, worldwide? Do you have details of that?
So worldwide, we're probably getting close to around 500,000 valve surgeries a year. And we're at an inflection point now where traditionally valve surgery was done as open heart surgery. So people had their chest cracked open, their heart was put, was stopped. They were put on a heart-lung bypass machine. The valve was cut out, and then a brand new valve was put in. The chest was sewed back together, and they're put into intensive care for 2 days, then recovered on the ward for 7 days, and usually back, take them 3 to 6 months to get back to normal life. But now what we can do is that we can replace that valve in about an hour, and you're home the next day. And we do that minimally invasively through a small incision into the artery of the leg, and we go through the artery of the leg, and we can probably talk about that later on in the night. But there are that sort of 500,000 valves that are being put in around the world. 3/4 of them, were being done surgically. But over the next 5 years, that number is going to become 50-50, and probably over the next 7 to 8 years, 3/4 of the way that we replace valves will be through that minimally invasive technique. And so that's exciting for patients, but it also highlights that we need better technology and better, to be able to actually meet the needs of this sort of emerging technique.
And what are these replacement valves made of? 2 different types, mechanical and animal tissue? Is that sort of roughly the descriptions?
Yeah, so I think, when heart valves were first put in many, many years ago, they were put in just mechanical. They were mechanical, so made out of metal. The leaflet was just something that was metallic, and it would open and close, and it would work as long as you took your blood thinners. And the blood thinner was warfarin, which, if anyone here in the audience knows somebody on warfarin or is on warfarin themselves, no, it's not the easiest drug to take, and can have side effects. And for many patients that was fine, but we know that actually many of the people who got mechanical heart valves are quite young. And sometimes, when people are young, there are other stresses and going on in life. And we've had patients who, as a result of, social stress, losing a job, family problems, just forget to take their tablets for a couple of weeks. And that could be enough to suddenly block off the valve. And typically that's a catastrophic outcome when the valve suddenly blocks off, because the heart hasn't had any time to compensate, and can result in sudden death or becoming incredibly unwell. And so increasingly, there's now, one, because of the issues of taking warfarin and blood thinners, there's an increasing push in using biological tissue, which is tissue that comes from animals. And so the most common valves that we put in now, whether it's surgical or whether it's that minimally invasive approach called TAVI, the leaflets come from animals. And they don't actually come from the animal leaflets themselves. They come from the lining of the heart of the animal. And the animals that we use are cows and pigs. And so the lining of the heart is thin and allows us, it's like a sheet of plastic, but it's not plastic. It's the lining of the heart, and it can be cut into the shape of a leaflet. We sew it onto a frame, and then it's put inside the body. And then I think later on we can talk about there are some intrinsic limitations in using animal leaflets. But also they're not actually animal leaflets, just using animal tissue that's not actually intrinsically designed to serve as a leaflet.
So in this story that we're painting, sort of for the last, if I've got this right, for the last 50 odd years, replacement heart valves or open heart surgery to replace a heart valve could occur. And then in about the last 15 years, the catheter inserted heart valves came onto the scene. In fact, that was a real first for us here in Western Australia, wasn't it?
Yeah, look, I mean, Western Australia's been a pioneer in this field for a long time. It was certainly before my era, but you know, Jenny Turner here in the audience, she's actually helped start the program 15 years ago, I think it was, Jenny. And WA has always been at the forefront of innovation in the space of heart valves, led by Dr. Gerald Yong and Jenny. And so, you know, we've seen the technology evolve a little bit, but what we've seen massively change is the type of people that we treat. So when the technology started 15 years ago, as I said at the start, this is traditionally was seen as the disease of aging, that there was this cohort of people above the age of 85, 90, that wanted to live a good life, but they couldn't because the valve was really narrow and they were really breathless as a result of it. And the surgeons were like, I'm really sorry, you're just not strong enough to have open heart surgery, which is pretty reasonable at that age. And so the technology came about to say, well, look, let's offer this to these people who had really no other option, that there's no tablets out there that could reverse this problem. There's no tablets out there that could dissolve that calcium. The only fix is a mechanical fix and a valve replacement. And so the technology started in people who had no hope, and they started living, and they lived longer than the colleagues who didn't, than their friends who didn't get the valve. And so as a result, now the field has been evolving. Okay, well, we've done it in the really, really high risk, really elderly people. Let's do it in those a little younger and compare it to surgery. And, you know, it does better than surgery. Okay, well, now let's do it in those who are even younger, we would always consider them for open heart surgery, but let's just see how this new technology or this TAVI goes. And again, TAVI did just as well as surgery. And so increasingly now the questions being raised is that, can we just do TAVI in all patients? And I think before we can fully answer that, there is a technology piece that we need to change, that the technology does need to improve for what it, because at the end of the day, what we're using today to some extent is very similar to what we were using 15 years ago. There's been some changes and advancements, but it's still somewhat similar.
That was a great overview. Thank you for setting that scene. Let's come to the patient perspective, Jenny. You run a really busy clinic, I know. What sorts of symptoms do people present with when they come to you?
Usually they're very subtle symptoms. People have experienced a slowing down and they've attributed it to old age. But when pushed and questioned, you begin to realise that the symptoms they have are all doing things. They're doing symptoms. So we look for what we call the triad of symptoms, but you don't necessarily have to have them all. Most frequently we would hear, I'm getting short of breath when I'm doing something. Sometimes people complain about being very tired or fatigued. Occasionally you get what we call lightheadedness or dizziness when you're doing something, or some chest pain when you're doing something. They're all doing exercises to let you know that the tap that goes from the water tank to the rest of the body is getting narrower and there's not enough fuel coming out to help you do the things that you wanted to do, and your body experiences these symptoms in response to the lack of oxygenated blood that's circulating in your body.
And these people have come to you referred by?
Frequently GPs now are getting patients coming in and saying, I'm short of breath, and they're taking an echo or an ultrasound picture of their heart and identifying a problem with their heart valve, and then they're sent through to what we are called the heart team. We have cardiologists in private practice who will send patients to us because you need a big centre that has cardiac surgery and all the fancy technology that we can offer to assess and provide this treatment. And more frequently we're getting inpatients both from external to, for instance, Fiona Stanley Hospital, other hospitals, or patients that have presented either to ED or to Fiona Stanley Hospital with symptoms or for other reasons being referred to us quite quickly.
And when you sit with patients and their families, what are their worries and concerns? What are the things they're asking you about?
Well, obviously the first thing is there's something wrong with my heart. It's kind of like the engine room of the body. So people are worried because there's something wrong with my heart. Am I going to drop dead suddenly? And Of course, that's a possibility, but I'll tell you now that the reality is it's a deterioration, a slow deterioration, and the symptoms of heart failure or the heart weakening are probably more of a concern than the ability to drop dead suddenly. But people are worried about dying. People are worried usually about their partner, leaving their partner behind, or what's going to happen with my family. And they're worried about whether they're going to be able to get back the quality of life that they had before.
Yeah. And so do you ever find yourself having end-of-life conversations?
Probably more often than you might think, because one of my passions is making sure that you're here for the right reasons, that you're not here because your family have pushed you into coming in and having something done. People come in and they say, but I'm 82, is it really worth doing something for me? And I say an age is a number is not the thing that makes it worth doing or not doing. It's about how excited you are about your life and your quality of life, and are you expecting to get back to that quality of life? If you tell me you've been watching Days of Our Lives for the last 10 years, I probably would tell you a new valve is not going to help you change the television channel any quicker.
Abdul, just briefly before we go to Elena, when a patient has a catheter inserted valve, how long do they last currently?
So at the moment, because this field has only been around for 10 to 15 years, and we've mainly put it into people above the age of 85 to start, it's only been the last 5 years that we put in much younger. We don't have a lot of long-term data, but the data seems to suggest that it will last between 5 to 10 years. Some people it might last longer, but we know that the more active that you are, the more mechanical forces there are on those leaflets, and the quicker that those leaflets will degenerate. So as we put these into younger patients are going to demand different things from the technology than, say, someone who's 85, 90. And so, and that's where I think that, some of the work that Elena is working on is really exciting, because I think it does address that unmet need in the field.
Yeah, something that might last a long time. So let's come to you, Elena. I know that was a lot of scene setting, but I'm sure we'll get to you. Now, this is an interesting thing. So Elena is a materials engineer, which is what I was talking about earlier. This has been used by our students. It's probably falling apart a bit, but this is the type of polymer. It's like a cobweb, and you can certainly come down and have a look at it later. It's like a tapestry of fibrous material, isn't it? And this is one of the things Elena was working on before she came to Perth, when she was in Queensland, which was really to develop a scaffolding to see how the cells of the human body might grow into it. And I was talking to one of your young PhD students before you arrived when she delivered this, and she said that there's actually a patient in Queensland who ran the risk of losing his leg, and so he put his leg forward to have a trial inserted. Is that right?
That's correct, that's correct.
How's he going?
He's walking. He's walking after more than 5 years after
He's
the
working.
surgery. He can walk.
He's walking.
Yeah. So his leg was saved.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is remarkable. So we've not quite got to the stage yet where this is standard procedure.
It was a clinical trial, and it is still experimental research. But we aim to push this forward to make it available to any people, any patient who needs it. Yeah.
And it's obviously the body's cells can accept this. Does the immune system have any reaction?
Very good question. So when we put something inside our bodies, which is not us, the body will recognize it as it's not us. If it doesn't recognize that it's not us, there's something wrong with our immune system. So there is always a reaction of the immune system to any foreign body. But these materials we work with are what we consider biocompatible, meaning there is a very mild reaction, controllable, and is not an issue in terms of health. So it allows us to work with them and implant them. Yeah.
So this product is also expected to be a lifelong implantation when you get to the point when it's going to be used?
Okay, so in this particular scaffold you have in your hands, this polymer, this plastic, is designed to dissolve slowly over the years. So it's not meant to be a permanent implant. It's meant to stay there temporarily to support the cells of your body to grow over it and form new bone, which is what this patient has seen. Over the 5-year period, new bone has formed, and that polymer is slowly dissolving. What we have seen is that the technology to produce that scaffold is compatible with the use of polymers that are either biodegradable, like that case, or that are meant to stay in your body for your lifetime. They are permanent. So we are working upstairs in the lab with both types of polymers.
Right, okay. So you've moved from bone scaffolds, you've come to Perth. Why heart valves?
Yeah. Why heart valves? It was a fascinating field. So we were thinking I was very inspired by the work done with this bone scaffold. And I thought, well, if this has such a huge impact in the life of a young patient, can we not help people with, very deteriorating diseases? And cardiovascular disease, we know, is the #1 killer. And when I was thinking of complex tissues in the body we could try our technology with, so the heart valve came to my mind. It's like there is nothing more complex than that. If we could push our technology forward and demonstrate that this can work for something like this, we can probably extend it to any other tissue in the body.
So you chose the most complex part of the body. Well done. And the aortic valve itself, is that the most complex of the heart valves?
Well, you can ask Abdul, but definitely is the valve that enables oxygenated blood out of the heart. So it definitely has the highest engineering requirements, if you wish. Like from the technical point of view, is the highest pressures and blood flows. So it is challenging, and that's why we wanted to see.
Yes, because when you think of the complexity, what you're talking about is not just extraordinary internal pressures, but also the external pressures. Correct. And the pressure changing with every beat. And what did Abdul say? $40 million beats a year.
A year. Depends on how active the person is, obviously. If you are not, very, sedentary or whatever, it will be less. But it definitely is incredible amount of cycles of opening and closing. So in engineering, we know when we design an airplane, so you think of the wings, and it has to, withstand millions of cycles of fluctuations. In the heart valve, it's a lot harder than in an airplane to design something for that. So flexural properties, so how easy it bends, how good it bends, how much it stretches and it shrinks over time, one time after another. It's incredibly complex. And
yes, because you were explaining to me that there's the stretch happens in many different directions.
Exactly. So when you have a heart valve opening, each leaflet stretches differently in every direction. So there is one direction where the valve stretches the most, the leaflet, but in the perpendicular direction, it's actually much less. So when you think of the current materials used for valves, they don't consider this complexity. They use a material that can be used as a leaflet, and they do provide good outcomes, but it's not as good as our native valves. It's not as complex. And we know the issues with durability are connected with this lack of material behavior that we haven't addressed yet in the field.
Right. We've actually got a video of your heart valve working. It was actually a video made because tomorrow is World Heart Day, so it was made to send out to donors. So excuse the fact that it focuses on donor at the end of it. But let's just have a little look at it.
This is a close-up view of one of Dr. Elena de Juan Pardo's 3D printed heart valves in action. Elena and her team in the Template Lab built their own 3D printers at the Perkins. These are capable of producing cellular scaffolds that, when placed in your body, can replace faulty body parts. Some of these scaffolds are designed to be absorbed by your body's own cells, creating a healthy replacement. But the 3D printed heart valves are different. They're made of a stable biomaterial that won't degrade over time, which means they can remain in your body forever. That's great news for patients because they won't need to endure repeat high-risk open heart surgeries. The replacement valves that you're helping to develop will also be less prone to infection. Because of your support of Elena's work, people with heart valve disease will have kinder treatment options available to them in the future.
Abdul, for those of us who've never actually seen inside, I'm hoping you're there, yes you are, for those of us who've actually not seen the inside workings of a human heart valve, is that sort of what the leaflets look like? Is that fairly similar to what it looks like, essentially?
In a valve, in leaflets that are working beautifully, yes. And so it really, like a picture tells 1,000 words. And so, from a design aspect, if you show this to another engineer or you show this to a specialist in the field who's interested in it, when you look at the pictures of what Elena's designed, it's remarkable, because the way that the leaflets are opening, essentially completely open. And what we don't have on video, and what we probably should do, Elena, one day, is actually do a comparator that if we put in a standard heart valve today, what do the leaflets look like? And they look nice, they open, but they don't fully open. And so when we put in valves today, patients are still left with what we call a residual narrowing. The narrowing doesn't cause major problems, but the leaflets don't completely go to a fully open position. And I think that Elena is able to achieve that appearance because of the architecture of these 3D printed leaflets mimics the architecture of the human heart valve. And by mimicking the architecture allows Elena to achieve similar mechanical properties and then hopefully improve durability. So I think it's from a purist scientific perspective, I think these are beautiful pictures.
In fact, I was going to ask you, Elena, why did you choose to try and actually mimic a human heart valve? There could have been other ways to do this.
Yes, so why the heart valve?
Well, no, why did you choose to mimic how the human heart valve
right.
actually operates?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I always ask myself the same question. As a materials engineer, I like knowing how things work the way they do. It's like, why is this like it is? What makes it be this stiff or this soft? So I decided to go a step backwards from what the field was doing at the moment and look at the native tissue before just going into the lab and trying out materials. So to understand, or to try to understand better how a native human valve achieves the amazing properties it has. And there, when we found out, there's literature published, but no one has ever had the idea of using that natural structure, microstructure of the heart valve to design a new valve. So we saw the valve contains a lot of collagen fibers, as collagens, as many other tissues in our body. So collagens are very small, very thin. Depending on the tissue, it could be thinner than your hair. Really small fibers. They form bundles, and in the heart valve, they have a very beautiful orientation, and they present like wavy patterns that are meant to be that way, so that when you start stretching that leaflet, it's very soft, so it's no resistance almost to actually stretch it. But when those wavy collagen patterns become stretched, it becomes suddenly very stiff, and you can't pull any further, and that makes it unique. And if you look at those collagens, they are different in every orientation. So what we did is design some micro-printed structures with different wavy orientations, trying to mimic or copy those collagen orientations naturally found. And the answer, like you can see the video, that's what we saw. That actually gives the valve the unique properties that different in mechanical behavior within a leaflet that was not addressed before.
So we've actually got some, now these have been absolutely used by students, so they're fragile and falling apart. But yes, you won't be able to see, but at the end come up. So this is the extraordinary scaffold, and the 3 leaflets are sitting in there. It's just this exquisitely tiny thing. How long has it taken you to produce what we just saw in the video?
Very good question. So what you saw there, what we have done is program our 3D printer to print 4 valves at a time. It takes us 1.5 days. And you can think, oh, that's quite slow. Why so slow? And I'll tell you. So it's slow because you are layer by layer drawing the scaffold using micrometer fibers, like as thinner than your hair. 1 layer and another layer, another layer. So, and 1.5 days for 4 valves is way quicker than the time people take these days to look at the tissue from the animals, to prepare it, it's something around 40 days per one valve it takes to manufacture. So it's already much shorter manufacturing time. There are further steps to put the valve together that I haven't mentioned here, but it's definitely much quicker than it will be to use animal tissue.
So that's to be able to produce it now that you've got to this point. But how long has it taken you to get to this point of being able to produce that?
So I have to think, like I started working on this area of heart valves probably already 6-7 years ago. So it has been a journey to get here. And I guess the major, like, I think, milestone, besides just getting these results in the lab, has been coming to Perkins and being able to work with a clinician like Abdul. So that has been a game changer in the lab research work, in the perspective. For example, I didn't think before that I could change the polymer to use a permanent polymer and address the need for the elderly population already. I didn't think that way, and it was definitely discussing with Abdul. It just came up like, we should be doing this. And it's like, of course. and many things like that. So. Did
you have to design and build your own 3D printer to be able to produce this?
That's correct. So one of the challenges, like I think...
of course.
So the thing is, like, the technology's advances are incredible. And it's hard for every expert to know everything that is going on around in the world. So 3D printing is a very specific niche work. And cardiologists do their own thing. So that printer is very sophisticated because it can print with high resolution, micrometer size fibers, like less than your hair size fibers. That is very specific, very unique. And why I build my own printers? Because I cannot find in the market printers that can print that well. So I have to say, it's not just me. It's like I have incredible engineers upstairs in the lab, brilliant students. If any of you have been to any of my lab tours here, they're brilliant guys, and it's just it's teamwork. It's teamwork to put a printer like that together, and it's a lot of fun. We are building the 3rd printer at the moment upstairs on level 6.
In fact, if you ever do come up to the labs, it is just gorgeous. All of your students, I think, absolutely adore you, and they all just beam with excitement as they... In fact, I had a young reporter from the West Australian here last week, and one of your students was in the lab, and I sort of just made a glib, "Oh, can you explain this?" And the passion and enthusiasm, after about 15 to 20 minutes, I was like, must go now. Anyway. You mentioned the benefit of actually working, cardiologist, engineer. How did it come about that you two came to work together?
I think, if I remember well, it was Peter. It was Peter Littman who was telling me, you should talk to Abdul. And I was like, who is Abdul? A new cardiologist. He said, sure, I can talk to you. And then Abdul heard the same, like, you should talk to Elena. I think the first time he gave me a call, if I remember, Abdul. You gave me a call because you were putting a grant together, and you had a section on 3D printing, and you wanted me to kind of review that section and give you input. And then we eventually, it's like, you are working on heart valves, 3D printed valves? Really? And it's like, oh, you implant valves. So maybe we need to talk a bit more. And obviously, like, it was like, oh, wow. So you are in actually the theater implanting valves. He took me to the theater to see the procedures. It has been amazing. Yeah, really good.
And Abdul, from your perspective, how is it that you first came to work with Elena? What was your thoughts when Peter said, you should meet Elena, she does 3D printing?
Well, Peter told me, right when I first met Peter, he said, you absolutely need to meet Elena. She does 3D printing. And I had no idea what 3D printing really was. I was like, 3D printing was on the news for like printing things that are pretty illegal. There's probably a few 3D printers here in Cervantes at the moment, that kind of stuff. But then, I met Elena. I was like, wow, this is incredible stuff. And, to have someone in the Institute who spent her life on 3D printing in a cardiovascular space, but not just that, but in heart valves, and that was my clinical interest and research interest, it was fantastic. So, and I think, testament to Elena. Elena has is incredibly well recognized in her field, but coupled being someone who's lovely to work with and has a high level of integrity and scientific integrity, it was for me something it's been the most enjoyable aspect of my work here since I've come back to Perth 2.5 years ago. So, and I'm very excited for what we can hopefully achieve. And to put in context, like what Elena has done, I remember we put in front of actually probably the world expert in heart valve testing. So this guy all companies and research groups all around the world send him heart valves, and he puts them on a machine like you just saw the video, and he looks at them how they open and close. That's his job. He looks at how leaflets open and close, and his jaw dropped. I think I remember, and when we showed him the valve when we were visiting a conference, and so I think there's a lot of excitement about what we could achieve, and I think that the testament to Harry Perkins, the ability of a clinician and a researcher to get together and collaborate like this, and I'll stop now, Miriam. I'll let you take over. But yeah, clearly I can see I'm very excited.
I love it when I've got talkers. Elena, back to the valve. Obviously, enormous amounts of testing are required. So you created a simulator. It's gone through the simulator. When it first went through, what did you think?
Well, it took a few trials, as you can imagine, to get to that valve. But it was so exciting to see that what we thought it could work, it was working so beautifully. It was very exciting. So yeah, I guess there is always in science, there are very long days many times and hard moments, and there are moments of incredible excitement, and that was one of those when you were like, wow, this can actually work. So yeah, very, very exciting. So that keeps me going, to think there's something really good here that we can work hard to bring this forward. And yeah.
So do you know, is this the only one of its kind in the world, a heart valve that mimics the human heart valve?
I mean, as far as I know, and Abdul knows the field very well as well, we are quite clear. There's nothing at the moment in development anywhere where they use this concept of a fibrous mesh scaffold inside the leaflet to actually create the same mechanical behavior as a human leaflet. That is unique to the work we do here, and we expect to move it forward.
Have you patented it?
Yes, we have
Good.
patented it. So it is patented, it's protected, and obviously there's a lot of more patents being developed at the moment around the details, technical details.
And in fact, you and Abdul have actually formed a company recently, haven't
Yes,
you?
we have, and I have here our business partner, James Williams, is with us in the room, who has provided incredible leadership and corporate knowledge to the company called Corametics. Yeah, so we're very excited. We started off a few months ago in April this year. So we got funding from federal government to actually spin out a company from UWA so that the company can, commercialize those patents we had and bring them into patients. So yeah, it's a new journey. I'm learning a lot. It's challenging, but it's exciting. It's the first time in my entire career where I can see what I'm doing is really impactful. It can really reach patients, and that really is my drive. Yeah, it's my passion.
I think the bloke who's walking with the leg is probably pretty pleased too.
That's pretty good. Probably true, yeah. But yeah.
Jenny, what would your patients think if this became something that could be offered to them in the future?
I would think, and I'm thinking back to something Abdul said a little while ago about the fact that we've been putting these valves into older people because we didn't know how long they lasted. And we think that they probably have a lifespan of around 10 years or so. And once again, depending on how active you are and how much work you're doing on that valve. So when we are beginning to see younger patients come through the clinics, we have to consider what the future looks like for them, as in how many valve replacements will they have in their lifetime. There will be a valve and a valve in a valve, and we're having to look at other options. I think this is absolutely life-changing and exciting from my point of view, because you will be talking about a procedure that will last your lifetime. And I think being able to do that with a valve that doesn't require you to have to take a drug like warfarin is super exciting.
Let's not get the cart in front of the horse. How many years do you think?
Okay, so at the moment, we are prototyping this valve, this valve with these permanent materials. So it's going to take us another 1.5 years to take it to the first animal experiment to test blood compatibility, which is very important. Then, if everything goes well, so we'll take it to the next step, which is a chronic, we call it chronic, animal study to see long-term the durability of this valve in an animal, as well as testing it in a machine to see how many cycles of opening and closing the valve can withstand without breaking, so which is very important for durability. And then that will be enough, so that will be another 3 usually it's like another 3 years afterwards, 2-3 years before we can go into FDA, to ask for the approval to start a clinical trial and bring it to patients.
And Abdul, did you ever imagine that this was going to be possible? And could you imagine that we actually could get to the stage where it would be allowed to be inserted into a human being that first time?
Yeah, thanks. Look, I think it is somewhat surreal to be involved in something that could potentially, you have to aim big, and that could potentially change the field. And sometimes you'd have to pinch yourself. We're here in Perth. This is a global problem. There are, big institutes around the world trying to solve this problem. But, you have to back yourself. And I do believe that, I believe the science that we have is very solid. I believe the team that we have is really good. And, I think that we can tackle the problem in a, like as good as anyone else. I think some of the easier things about this than say other things that I've done before is that there is a tried and tested path. There are many valves that have made it to patients, or we call it to market. And we sort of have to follow a similar path. As Elena elucidated, there's an element of testing on the bench. So before the valve goes into even an animal, there's a lot of rigorous testing. How's that valve going to work? And then there's an element of you have to put into animals. That's sort of the regulatory requirements all over the world. You have to put into animals first, and that's done in a very controlled setting in very specialized labs, either here in Australia or in the United States, that will do it in a very specialized manner. And we make sure the valve is working, that it doesn't react abnormally. And then, after a lot of testing done on those valves, we get approval to put it into humans. And so I think that by nature of research, we collaborate with a lot of people around the world, even though we are in Perth. And there's a wealth of expertise that we can leverage on that will allow us to help. There are some both technical and commercial challenges to get to a patient, but we've got a plan.
Well,
until the plan stops working, we've got a plan. So
a plan is good. Just follow the plan.
Yeah.
Without doubt, it's a remarkable achievement. It is extraordinary to think that there could well be sometime in the future a lifelong, lasting, cheaper to manufacture heart valve that actually mimics a human heart valve. It is just superb, the work you're doing. We are all in awe and would like to say thank you very much.
Just one thing, Miriam, I think just on the point of, sometimes that the whole thing that we're based here in Perth and trying to address a very complex and global problem. When we speak to people around the world, there are opportunities that we get here in Australia that others don't. And at the moment, there is a lot of support from the government to try and support research and innovation, particularly innovation that can hopefully become something that enters into the patient. And the financial support and some of the grants here that are available here in Western Australia and in Australia are quite unique. Like they're not available. These kind of things don't exist in the United States. There may be other advantages being the US, but we do have some things that really help accelerate. Like the grant that we've now been given to try and commercialize this is quite unique and doesn't really exist in many other parts of the world. And so we've grabbed it with both hands, and we're going to take it as far as we can.
And from memory, you were amongst the first raft of researchers to receive this grant, which is designed for developing innovation, isn't it?
Yes, so there were 2 rounds. So we put our grant in the second round, and 12 companies were funded.
12.
As far as related to drugs or medical. We were the only medical device company, in fact.
Yeah. Fantastic. Look, thank you for that. We have run out of time. It's been an absolute pleasure listening to all of these different perspectives. And tomorrow, World Heart Day, MinRes backing every donation. Fantastic. I only learnt that this evening. I would really ask you all to thank our panellists who have really given us an extraordinary journey tonight. And do come down and have a look at this if you would like to. These valves are really not valves, they're actually just pieces of scaffolding that the students have had a good go with, but you'll get a sense of what they look like that will keep them in the container. But yes, thank you very much for coming.